There's a moment in every family's life when they have to decide, do we let the world in, or do we keep our lives private? For Jon and Kate Gosselin, that moment came in 2007. They had 8 children. Yes, 8. Twins and sextuplets. And they decided to let cameras follow their family 24/7. They decided to turn their most intimate moments into entertainment. They decided to make their children famous before those children could even consent to being famous. And what happened next would destroy a family in ways nobody could have predicted. Jon and Kate plus 8 became a cultural phenomenon. Millions of people tuned in every single week to watch this family navigate the chaos of raising 8 kids. People loved it. They were invested. They watched Jon and Kate struggle. They watched them laugh. They watched them fight. And they watched their children grow up on national television. For a decade, the show was a massive success. But success comes with a price. And that price was paid by 8 innocent children who never asked to be part of the deal. Now, years later, one of those children is finally speaking out. Hannah Gosselin, one of the sextuplets, has decided that the silence needs to end. She's decided that the world needs to know what really happened behind the scenes. She's decided that protecting her mother's image is no longer more important than telling the truth. And what she's revealing is shocking the people who grew up watching her family on television. Do you think parents have the right to put their children on reality TV for profit? Or should there be laws protecting kids from being turned into content? This is the question that Hannah Gosselin is forcing us all to ask. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this story is about to get really personal, really fast. The Gosselin family seemed perfect on camera. Jon was the calm, steady father. Kate was the organized, no-nonsense mother. And their 8 children were adorable, well-behaved, and always ready for the cameras. America fell in love with them. They felt like family. They felt real. But here's what nobody understood. That version of the Gosselin family that appeared on television was not the real Gosselin family. It was a carefully constructed performance. It was a show within a show. And the people paying the price for that performance were the children. When you're a child on a reality TV show, you don't get to clock out. You don't get to go home and escape the cameras. The cameras are always there. When you're having a bad day, the cameras are rolling. When you're fighting with your siblings, the cameras are rolling. When your parents are arguing, the cameras are rolling. Everything is content. Everything is potential footage. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is private. Hannah Gosselin grew up with this reality. She didn't know anything different. She was born into this world where her life was public property. Where millions of strangers felt like they had a stake in her family. Where her childhood wasn't just about living, it was about performing. And for years, she went along with it. She smiled. She acted. She did what was expected of her. But something changed as Hannah got older. Something shifted. She started to see what was really happening. She started to understand that the woman on camera, the Kate Gosselin that America loved, wasn't the same woman she lived with at home. She started to realize that the version of her mother that the world saw was a carefully curated image. And the real version was something completely different. This is the story that's about to shake everything you thought you knew about one of reality television's most famous families. This is the story of a daughter finally finding her voice. This is the story of the truth that's been hidden for years. And this is the story of what happens when cameras stop rolling and you're left with the real consequences of decisions made in pursuit of fame and money. For years, Hannah Gosselin kept quiet. She played the game. She appeared on the show. She smiled for the cameras. She did interviews. She maintained the family image. But inside, something was breaking. Something was fracturing. And eventually, that fracture became too big to ignore. The moment Hannah decided to speak out wasn't a sudden decision. It wasn't like she woke up one day and decided to blow up her family's image. It was a slow, painful realization that built over time. It was years of small moments adding up. Years of feeling unseen. Years of watching her mother prioritize the show over her children's well-being. Years of realizing that the woman America adored was not the woman she knew. In interviews and social media posts, Hannah has been careful not to be unnecessarily cruel. She's not out for revenge. She's not trying to destroy her mother's career or reputation. But she's also no longer willing to protect a lie. And what she's revealed is deeply troubling. According to Hannah, Kate Gosselin was often controlling, demanding, and emotionally distant. She made parenting decisions based on what would make good television, not what was best for her children. She prioritized ratings over relationships. And she created an environment where her children learned that their value was tied to their usefulness as content. One of the most painful things Hannah has discussed is the lack of privacy. Even in moments that should have been sacred, family dinners, bedtime routines, arguments between siblings, the cameras were there. And Kate, according to Hannah, didn't just allow this. She encouraged it. She made sure that every moment was filmed. She made sure that nothing was off-limits. Because off-limits moments don't make for good television. Think about what that does to a child. Think about growing up knowing that your private moments are being broadcast to millions of people. Think about never being able to have a bad day without worrying about how it will be edited and presented to the world. Think about your mother choosing the cameras over your emotional needs. That's the world Hannah Gosselin grew up in. Hannah has also spoken about the emotional toll of having a mother who seemed to care more about her image than about her actual children. Kate became known for being strict on the show, but according to Hannah, that strictness had a darker edge off camera. It wasn't discipline rooted in love. It was control rooted in narcissism. It was a woman so invested in her public persona that she couldn't see, or didn't care about, the damage she was doing to her children. One specific thing that Hannah revealed was particularly striking. She talked about how her mother would sometimes berate the children on set if they weren't performing well enough. If a child wasn't smiling big enough, if they weren't cute enough, if they weren't entertaining enough, Kate would express her disappointment. And for children, that kind of conditional love is devastating. It teaches them that they're only valuable when they're useful. That they're only loved when they're performing. The saddest part of Hannah's testimony is how much she clearly still loves her mother. She's not angry in a bitter way. She's angry in the way a child is angry when their parent has let them down. She's disappointed. She's hurt. She's grieving the mother she never got to have because that mother was too busy being Kate +8 to actually be Kate, the person. She's grieving the real relationship that never developed because everything had to be about the cameras. Hannah has also discussed how this dynamic affected her relationship with her father. Jon Gosselin, for all his flaws, at least eventually stepped back from the show. He eventually recognized that it was harmful and chose to distance himself from it. But Kate doubled down. She kept the show going. She kept pushing her children into the spotlight. And from Hannah's perspective, that choice said everything about her mother's priorities. If you want the truth behind stories like this, hit subscribe now. Because what comes next, the way Jon Gosselin's side of this story intersects with Hannah's truth, will show you just how fractured this family became. And it will show you the real cost of turning your family into content. What's particularly heartbreaking about Hannah's expose is that she's not just talking about her mother's behavior. She's talking about how that behavior rippled through her entire childhood. She's talking about siblings turning against each other because the show's producers wanted drama. She's talking about genuine moments of family connection being ruined because everyone was aware of the cameras. She's talking about growing up in a house where authenticity was the enemy and performance was everything. Some of her siblings have remained closer to their mother. Others have largely cut contact. But Hannah occupies this middle ground where she's trying to tell the truth while still acknowledging that her mother is a human being with her own struggles and insecurities. That's a mature, compassionate place to speak from. But it's also exhausting. Because it means acknowledging complexity while also not excusing harm. It means loving someone while also being honest about how they hurt you. The most powerful thing about Hannah's testimony is what it reveals about the nature of reality television itself. It exposes the fundamental contradiction at the heart of the industry. How can you truly be a family when everything you do is being filmed and edited and packaged for public consumption? How can you develop healthy relationships when every argument might end up on television? How can you be a child when your childhood is currency? Hannah didn't create this problem. Jon and Kate created it when they signed on to the show. But Hannah has been brave enough to name it. To refuse to pretend anymore. To say out loud what millions of viewers should have been asking all along: at what cost did we get this entertainment? What price did the Gosselin children pay so that we could spend our evenings watching their family drama? When Jon and Kate Gosselin first pitched their reality show idea, they probably told themselves it was about sharing their story. About showing the world what it was like to raise 8 children. About inspiring other parents. About being relatable and real. But what actually happened was something far more sinister. What actually happened was that parenting decisions started being made based on what would make good television rather than what was best for the children. This is the dark heart of reality television parenting. Once you introduce cameras into family life, once you introduce the profit motive, once you introduce the idea that your family's struggles are entertainment, everything changes. You can't unsee it. You can't unhear it. And your children are the ones who suffer the consequences. Think about what it means to raise a child for ratings. Every discipline decision becomes a performance. Every family conflict becomes potential content. Every emotional moment becomes something to be exploited. Kate Gosselin understood this instinctively. She understood that drama made for good television. She understood that children struggling, fighting, crying, that was the kind of content that kept viewers watching. And she was willing to create those moments if it meant keeping the show relevant. One of the most disturbing aspects of reality television parenting is how it weaponizes children's natural development. Children fight with their siblings. Children have meltdowns. Children make mistakes. That's normal. That's healthy development. But when you're filming it, when you're editing it, when you're presenting it to millions of people, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes entertainment. It becomes performance. It becomes a narrative that the child has to live up to. Hannah and her siblings weren't just being filmed going about their lives. They were being directed. They were being told where to stand, what to do, how to react. In some cases, they were being asked to recreate scenes or redo moments because the first take wasn't dramatic enough. Imagine being a child and having your authentic emotional responses deemed insufficient. Imagine being asked to cry harder or yell louder or be sadder because your genuine reaction didn't make for compelling television. That's psychological abuse. That's what happened to the Gosselin children. The financial aspect of this can't be ignored either. Jon and Kate made millions of dollars off their children's images. Millions. Their children were literal cash cows. And while some of that money was presumably set aside for the children's futures, the dynamic was clear. These children's value was directly tied to their ability to generate content and keep an audience engaged. The message, spoken or unspoken, was simple: you exist to entertain people. Your worth is measured in ratings. As the children got older, some of them started to resist. Some of them started to recognize what was happening. And when they did, when they didn't want to participate anymore, what happened? Kate's response wasn't to respect their boundaries. Her response was to try harder to keep them on the show. She wanted to maintain the narrative. She wanted to keep the revenue stream flowing. And when that didn't work, when her children started leaving, her response was to blame them. This is a pattern we've seen over and over again with reality television families. The parents become so invested in the show, so dependent on the income, so identified with their public persona, that they can't see, or won't acknowledge the harm they're causing. They tell themselves they're doing it for the children. They tell themselves it's providing educational opportunities. They tell themselves it's giving the children a head start in life. But what they're really doing is prioritizing their own needs over their children's well-being. The research on child reality television stars is deeply concerning. These children grow up with stunted social development. They struggle to form authentic relationships because they're used to performing. They have difficulty distinguishing between their real selves and their on-camera personas. They often experience depression and anxiety related to their lost privacy. And many of them carry deep resentment toward the parent who decided that fame was more important than their childhood. Hannah Gosselin is one of the lucky ones, in a sense. She's articulate. She's intelligent. She's been able to process her experience and articulate what happened to her. But not all reality television children are able to do that. Some of them are still trapped in the system. Some of them are still being exploited by parents who refuse to acknowledge the harm. Some of them won't be able to speak out until they're much older, if they ever speak out at all. What Hannah's story reveals is that parenting for ratings creates a fundamental conflict of interest. When your child's emotional distress makes for better television, you have an incentive to create emotional distress. When your child's struggle generates engagement, you have an incentive to perpetuate that struggle. When your child's tears translate to money, you have an incentive to make them cry. That's not parenting. That's exploitation. Have you ever felt something slowly change in your own life? Have you ever realized that someone you trusted was prioritizing something else over your well-being? That's what happened to the Gosselin children. Slowly, over years, they realized that their mother's love for them was conditional on their usefulness. That's a wound that doesn't heal quickly. That's a betrayal that colors everything. The tragedy of the Gosselin family is that it didn't have to happen this way. Jon and Kate could have set boundaries. They could have said no to certain requests. They could have protected their children's privacy. They could have recognized that there are some things more important than money and fame. But they didn't. And now, years later, their children are the ones dealing with the fallout. What's particularly striking is that Kate Gosselin seems unable or unwilling to acknowledge the harm she's caused. Even as her children speak out, even as they describe the emotional toll, she seems to maintain the narrative that she did what was best for her family. She seems unable to see herself from their perspective. She seems unable to recognize that her choices had consequences beyond the ratings numbers. This is the ultimate cost of parenting for ratings. It's not just the immediate harm to the children. It's the long-term fracturing of family relationships. It's the resentment that builds over years. It's the children growing up and realizing that their parent chose fame over them. And it's the parent being unable or unwilling to recognize that reality, even when their children are spelling it out for them. For a long time, Hannah Gosselin stayed silent. She didn't go on talk shows. She didn't write tell-all books. She didn't launch into angry rants on social media. She just lived her life, tried to move forward, and carried the pain in private. But silence has a cost too. And eventually, that cost became too high to bear. The breaking point came gradually. It wasn't one moment. It was a series of moments. It was seeing her mother continue to present herself as a victim of circumstance while ignoring the very real pain she had caused her children. It was watching her mother benefit from the family's story while her siblings struggled with the aftermath. It was realizing that if she didn't speak up, the narrative would remain controlled by the person who had harmed her most. So Hannah started talking. In interviews, on social media, in conversations with journalists who reached out wanting to understand what really happened behind the scenes of Jon and Kate +8. And what she revealed was devastating in its specificity and its honesty. Hannah described a mother who was often cold and controlling. A woman who made decisions based on what would look good on camera rather than what was best for her children's emotional well-being. She described a mother who would be warm and loving one moment, when the cameras were rolling, and then completely shut down the next moment, reverting to a distant, critical parent the moment filming stopped. That kind of inconsistency is deeply confusing for children. It teaches them that love is conditional. It teaches them that they have to perform to be worthy. One particularly striking revelation was about how Kate treated her children when they weren't cooperating with the show's production demands. If a child didn't want to be filmed, if a child was having a bad day and didn't want to perform, Kate's response was often anger and disappointment rather than understanding and support. She made the children feel like they were letting her down by not wanting to participate in their own exploitation. That's psychological manipulation, whether Kate recognized it as such or not. Hannah has also spoken about the exhaustion of constantly being watched and evaluated. Not just by the cameras, but by her mother. Kate would critique the children's appearance, their behavior, their emotional responses. She would tell them they weren't cute enough, weren't behaving well enough, weren't entertaining enough. For developing children, this kind of constant criticism is devastating. It creates deep insecurity. It teaches them that they're fundamentally not good enough. Another thing Hannah revealed was how the show affected her relationship with her siblings. The producers, following the entertainment industry's obsession with drama, would sometimes pit the children against each other. They would encourage conflict. They would film arguments and present them as entertainment. And the children, not understanding that this was intentional manipulation, would internalize the idea that their siblings were their competitors rather than their allies. The family bond that should have been strongest was instead fractured by the show's need for drama. Hannah has described specific instances where she tried to set boundaries with her mother about being filmed, and those boundaries were not respected. She's described being forced to participate in scenes she didn't want to participate in. She's described moments where her emotional distress, genuine, real distress, was being filmed and presented as entertainment. And she's described her mother prioritizing the show over her child's emotional needs. What's particularly painful about Hannah's revelations is that they paint a picture of a mother who was so invested in her public image that she couldn't see her real children anymore. Kate Gosselin became Kate +8. She became the character she played on television. And in doing so, she lost the ability to be a real mother to her real children. She lost the ability to prioritize their needs over her image. She lost the ability to see them as human beings rather than as content. Hannah has also been clear about the fact that she doesn't hate her mother. That's important to understand. She's not motivated by revenge or bitterness. She's motivated by a need to tell the truth and to protect other children from experiencing what she experienced. She's motivated by the hope that by speaking out, she can help people understand the real cost of reality television parenting. But the truth is painful. The truth is that her mother chose fame and money over her emotional well-being. The truth is that her childhood was stolen from her. The truth is that she'll never get those years back. She'll never get to experience what it feels like to have a mother who prioritizes her over a television show. She'll never get to know what genuine, unconditional maternal love feels like, because that was never what she received. One of the most heart-wrenching things Hannah revealed was about the financial aspect of the show. She discussed how money earned from filming her and her siblings was used, but how little of it seemed to actually benefit them in meaningful ways. They were generating millions of dollars, and yet they didn't have financial security or college funds set aside. They had notoriety instead. They had trauma instead. They had a mother who had become famous off their backs instead of actual support or protection. Hannah has also spoken about how the show's cancellation affected her family. When the ratings started to drop, when audiences moved on to the next reality television family, what happened? The Gosselin children lost their value. They were no longer useful. They were no longer currency. And suddenly, the family had to deal with the aftermath of years of exploitation without the financial incentive that had justified it in the first place. What Hannah's revelations ultimately show is that reality television parenting is a form of child exploitation, full stop. There's no way around it. There's no way to film your children 24/7 for profit without causing psychological harm. There's no way to prioritize ratings over your child's well-being without scarring them. And there's no way to maintain authentic family relationships when everything is being performed for an audience. Hannah has also discussed how difficult it's been to have her childhood be public property. Even now, years later, people approach her on the street and reference things from the show. They feel like they know her. They feel entitled to her story. They want details. They want drama. And she has to navigate all of that while also trying to heal from what that show did to her. The most powerful moment in Hannah's testimony comes when she talks about forgiveness. She hasn't fully forgiven her mother. She may never fully forgive her mother. But she's also not interested in revenge or punishment. She just wants acknowledgement. She wants her mother to see what she did. To understand the harm. To apologize genuinely. And based on everything Hannah has said, that acknowledgement has not come. If Hannah's story is about a daughter finally speaking truth about her mother, then Jon Gosselin's story is about a father watching his relationship with his children crumble while feeling powerless to stop it. Jon's journey through the reality television experience is different from Kate's, and understanding that difference is crucial to understanding what happened to this family. Jon Gosselin has admitted, in multiple interviews over the years, that he regrets the show. Not in a vague, general way, but specifically. He regrets putting his children on television. He regrets prioritizing the money over their well-being. He regrets not stepping in earlier to protect them from the exploitation that was happening right in front of him. And most painfully, he regrets the estrangement that resulted from all of this. When the show first started, Jon seemed like the more reluctant parent. He was often shown as the one who was tired, who wanted peace and quiet, who was less invested in the performance aspect of the whole thing. But that reluctance didn't translate into protection. It didn't translate into him saying no to the cameras. It didn't translate into him fighting to keep his children's lives private. And that's something he's had to live with. One of the most revealing things Jon has discussed is how the show changed his marriage to Kate. The pressure of performing 24/7, the stress of cameras constantly in their home, the financial incentives that created perverse motivations, all of it took a toll. But more than that, Jon has described how Kate became increasingly controlling as the show went on. She became more invested in maintaining the image, more willing to do whatever it took to keep the ratings up, more convinced that the show was her identity. Jon has suggested that Kate's behavior became increasingly narcissistic as the show progressed. That her need to be seen, to be validated, to be the center of attention, grew stronger over time. And as that happened, Jon found himself in the position of having to either go along with it or risk losing his family. For years, he went along with it. He showed up. He performed. He let his children be exploited alongside him. But eventually, something shifted. Eventually, Jon reached a breaking point. He realized that he couldn't keep doing this. He realized that the cost to his relationship with his children was too high. And he made the decision to step back from the show. That decision had consequences. Serious consequences. It created a rift between him and Kate. It created a situation where Kate was able to control the narrative about why he left. And most devastatingly, it created a situation where his children grew up hearing their mother's version of why their father wasn't around. This is one of the cruelest aspects of what happened to the Gosselin children. Jon wanted out. Jon was trying to protect them. But because Kate controlled the show, because Kate controlled the narrative, his exit was presented as abandonment rather than protection. His children grew up thinking their father didn't want them, when in reality,